Handicapper Steve here, handicapping the Breeders Cup from Santa Anita Park here on Saturday. It is the 4th of November 2023. Going to look at all of Saturday's championship races, but before I get on to that, remember to please follow me on Twitter at HorseRacingKid5 for more selections for race courses around the world, and I mean it around the world. After the Breeders Cup, there's still some good racing here stateside, and in the UK, the jumps racing starts to heat up, so hopefully you follow me on both platforms for more of my thoughts on some of these races. But we have a good Breeders' Cup this year. The only thing I do not like is the Classic isn't the last race; it's the third to last race, which I find very weird. They're doing it because of broadcast reasons, but they could have started the card early. I don't know why. But we'll look at all Saturday's championship races. We have a lot of them to get to. Races 3 to 11. So sit back and enjoy, and let me talk for the next maybe an hour, I'm not sure. But let's get to the third race from Santa Anita, which is the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. It's a grade 1 event going for $1 million purse, race for 3-year-olds and upwards. Originally had a field of 9 horses entered. Please take out the 2-horse Practical Joke and the 7-horse Algiers. We'll be down to a field of 7 horses taking a stroll around the Santa Anita main track, which is 1,600 meters in circumference, or the mile trip on the main track. My top selection here, I'm going to go take the number 5 horse Charge It. I'm going to go 5-3-4-9 in the superfecta. 5-3-4-9 super. Top selection to 5 horse Charge It. There's 4-year-old colt by Tap It. Todd Pletcher trains. John Velazquez gets on this one. Blinkers off for the first time since March. Most recently with blinkers on in the Woodward at Aqueduct. Mile 8th on the 1st of October. He finished 4th by 5 1/4 lengths. The winner Zandon really closed up into a nice pace to win that day from mid-pack. This horse just kind of stalked and was flat that day. He never really got going. Also, Johnny lost the whip, which is, you don't expect Johnny to do that, but, what can you do? He lost the whip in the lane. It just wasn't the horse's day to win. I didn't even know he lost the whip until reading the comment line. Then I had to go back to the race, and you do see it fly out of his hand. I was at Aqueduct that day, and I was standing on the rail. I don't watch a lot of races on the rail. I decided, I'm going to watch the Woodward from the rail at the 8th, at the 16th pole, whatever it was. I don't remember the whip flying out of his hand. So that's something I learned this week. But that's for another. That's something you learn. Two-pack, he ran in the Whitney at Saratoga, mile 8th on the 5th of August, and he finished 4th by 10 lengths that day. And he was just wide, and he couldn't get into it. Again, it just wasn't his day to win. I thought he was a little bit too far out of it. And then prior to that, he loves Belmont. He ran the Suburban over the mile and a quarter, 8th of July, on a very muggy day. He won by 4 3/4 lengths that day, and he took off clear with a career best, second career best, 106 bar. That was an impressive run. And then he ran the Metropolitan Handicap at Belmont over the mile. He finished 4th by 5 1/4 lengths. He just never really got going. He ran okay, but needs something more. And then he ran the Oaklawn Handicap, where he's just ran a head scratcher with the blinkers on. Without the blinkers, he hasn't run half bad. He ran the Gulfstream Park Mile, where he finished 2nd by 1/4 lengths behind Endorsed. He just couldn't get Endorsed caught him late, but he ran his heart out that day. And then off the bench over mile 16th at Gulfstream, winning by 1/4 lengths with a 102 buyer. Again, he really took off clear. Like I said, he likes Belmont. He ran in the Dwyer of 2022 over the mile, and he won by 23 lengths with a 111 bar. He forged home clear. That was a very, very, very good run. Coming here today, training well at Keelan. I'm going to give him a shot here on the ticket. Don't throw out the 3-horse Cody's Wish. He just wasn't handling the mile in the 8th at Saratoga in the Whitney 2-back, where he finished 3rd by 10 lengths. Wadabaro really, probably ran the race of his life that day. This horse, it just wasn't his day. Came back to run a very good victory in the Vosburg going away, and, his mile wasn't bad. His Churchill Downs race wasn't bad. We ran around, his last time we ran around 2 turns before the Whitney was in last year's Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and he won by a head. He had to be used a lot that day, but he grinded it out to victory that day. He came back to a 112 buyer earlier this year. I expect him to really run a good race. He's training well locally. Watch out for him on the multis, and also watch out for the 4-horse Zozos for Florent Giroux and Brad Cox. His Ack was very good under the radar with a 99 bar around 1 turn. He really took off clear that day. They ran him the Islam before that at Monmouth, where he finished 4th by 3 1/4 lengths, just kind of hitting the wall that day from from the inside. And then prior to that, in the Hanshin over the slop at Ellis, he won by 3 lengths. That's when Ellis was a conveyor belt of speed. He really, freaked that day. And then he won the Knicks Go on Derby weekend at Churchill. Again, he has won over 2 turns. Maybe a 1-turn mile is possibly his better trip, but it wouldn't surprise me if he wins here today. I'll give him a shot on the ticket, but I do prefer the other 2 before him. We'll use him in some early pick 3s. But to recount my selection for the third from Santa Anita now, it is the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Going to take the 5-horse Charge It. We'll give kudos to the 3-horse Cody's Wish and the 4-horse Zozos. 5-3-4-9 Super. 5-3-4 in our multi-race. To the lawn, to the turf course with the 4th race now from Santa Anita. It is the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $2 million purse race for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of a dozen horses entered. Let's see if we have any scratches in this one. We have a field of, no scratches it looks like in this one right now, knock on wood. My field 12 horses going 2,000 meters or a mile and a quarter on the Santa Anita Turf course. Did I say that? I can't even remember now. I've looked at a lot of races this week and it's been a long week. My top selection here, I'm going to go take the number 6 horse in Spiral, 6-10-2-4 in the superfecta, 6-10-2-4 super, top selection 6 horse in Spiral. This 4-year-old filly by Frankel here. John Gosden trains. Frankie Dettori gets the mount. Before I go any further, I called it last winter that Frankie wasn't retiring. I said, there's no way. After the winter he just had stateside at Santa Anita, I said, going to the UK, there's no way he's going to retire off the mounts he was getting stateside, even in the beginning of the European flat season. And then, he just, had a great season. And it's going to be cool to see him ride here stateside full time for the next few seasons or so. But I thought the farewell tour was all, for another day. Inspiral most recently ran the on very fast ground at Newmarket in the Group 1 Sun Chariot, and he won by 3 3/4 lengths that day, and she had a dream trip. She stalked all the way around the race course. When she got to the front end, she basically waltzed home. That was a very easy run. She is going to the mile and a quarter for the first time. I don't think it should be a problem. If she gets out of the gate clear, she could get a good tracking trip, and I think she could go a long way here today, but she's going to have to get out of the gate. She didn't get out of the gate so clearly in the pre-Jacques Maurice at Deauville over the mile on 13th of August. She won by 1 1/4 lengths. Didn't get out of the gate so clearly, which cost her some strides early on. She had to get a lot of ground, but she got the job done. But she's going to have to break. And then before that, soft ground at Goodwood in the Group 1 Sussex. She hates soft ground. She was facing the boys. She was facing Paddington, who would have been your favorite later on in the Breeders' Cup Mile. She finished 5th by 8 1/4 lengths that day. She didn't get out of the gate so clearly. She was wide, and she just never really showed up that day. But prior to that, she ran a massive race in the Queen Anne. She finished 2nd by a neck that day. Again, not breaking so well, which is the thing with her. But she was really, the turn of foot late wasn't bad at all. She's going to see fast ground here today. Like I said, I think the extra 2 furlongs should suit her well. Watch out for her. I think a horse going way under the radar in this race is the 10-horse McCulloch for Chad Brown and Ira Ortiz Jr. Everybody's going to an Italian. I just think an Italian is going to stay the mile and a quarter. She barely stayed a mile 3/16 last year. She's getting an extra 16th a mile, which is a lot for this one. I think an Italian would have probably been better in the mile. I think she would have a massive chance in the mile if she ran there. But they're running her here. But I think McCulloch, the mile and a quarter actually might be a little bit too short for her. I think a mile and a half later on the card did her better. But she won the way at Saratoga over at Aqueduct over the mile 3. It's a very soft ground earlier this month, winning by 2 lengths that day, a little bit wide, but she took off clear. And then the Flower Bowl at Saratoga over the mile 3. She finished 2nd by 1 1/4 lengths. Parnack had the jump on this one, but this horse, she was gaining that day. And then the Glen Falls, she won by a neck, beating home the incredible mare, Warlike Goddess. Ira just rode a good race, and Joelle didn't ride a good race on Warlike Goddess. But this is the kind of horse she'll see a good pace to close up into. She hasn't hit that triple-digit buyer yet, but she has been improving. Watch out for this horse here today, training incredibly well at Belmont. But to recount my selections for the 4th from Santa Anita, it's the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. Gonna take the 6-horse in Spiral. Give kudos to the 10-horse McCulloch, where we 6-10-2-4 super, 6-10 in our multi-race. To the 5th event now from Santa Anita. It is the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint. It's a Grade 1 event going for $1 million purse race for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 9 horses entered, going 1,400 meters or 7 furlongs on the main track. My top selection, I'm going to go with the number 7 horse Society. I'm going to go 7-1-4-9 in the superfecta. 7-1-4-9 super. Top selection 7 horse Society. This 4-year-old filly by Gunrunner. Steve Steve Asmussen trains. Tyler Gaffalione gets the mount. The horse's most recent outing came 25th of August at Charlestown, 7 furlongs in the pink ribbon. The horse went by 5 1/4 lengths, had dream trip that day. He basically got to the front and out of the gate and didn't look back. Wasn't facing the world's toughest horses, but that was basically a paid workout with a career best 106 buyer. First things first, coming to a mile circumference track. It is a one turn instead of 2 turns like Charlestown, but could be forwardly paced here today. And I think that could go a long way for this horse. I also like that she could run fresh off breaks. She is coming off of a pretty lengthy break from that last race. Even her last 2 were lengthy breaks. 2 back to run the Chicago Handicap or Chicago Stakes at Ellis in Henderson, Kentucky. 7 furlongs on the 24th of June. Again, if you followed Ellis back in June when Churchill had to close early and they moved everything to Ellis Park from about early June to about early July, right where their normal meeting was about to begin, their main track was a conveyor belt of speed. If you were on the front end, you were probably winning. This horse, was in the midst of that. And in the midst of everybody winning on the front end, she did just that. She won by nearly a dozen. She took off clear. She was flying that day. 105 buyer, 120 and 2 for 7/8. That was an incredible run that day. A major improvement off the race before, which is the La Trion over the mile 16th that day. She finished 9th by 18 1/4 lengths that day. Wide post draw. She just didn't do a lot of running that day. I do think the mile 16th was just too long for her. And then the Madison over the 7 furlongs at Keelan. Off the bench, she might have needed the race, but she finished 3rd by 5 1/4 lengths. Goodnight Olive was just fresh that day and really took off clear. But this horse, she showed some speed that day. And then, like I said, she won the Cotillion last year because the speed was holding up on that track. Then they ran her in the Breeders Cup Distaff last year over the mile and 8th, where she just never really got going. I think 7 is what she wants to do. She's training well since the last run. I do like that they've had her here locally since early October, so she's getting accustomed to this track. At 5-2, I think she's very loaded. I think the one horse Goodnight Olive for Irad and Chad Brown could get the job done. Lost in the Ballerina last time. He had an Echo Zulu who freaked that day. This horse was just wide and just couldn't catch Echo Zulu, who really just gamed this horse to the wire. Prior to that, in the Bed of Roses, Irad, got better from the mistake he made, or he got ridden in the previous race in the Distaff Derby, whatever they call it, at Churchill in the race before, and he got redemption winning the Better Roses after that. He won by a Nike. He took the horse wide and he really took off clear with a 98 buyer. And then Tyler Gaffalione on Society blocked this horse home, or not Tyler, but in the Derby City Distaff, this horse got blocked in the lane on the rail by I want to say it was Tyler Gaffalione on Wicked Halo or Mare or something like that. And this horse, he was all loaded, just couldn't get out. What can you do? Ran like the winner that day. And then the Madison Keelan win by length with a 98 bar. It was a very good run. Repeat winners of this race, have happened. She won this race last year quite nicely by 2 1/4 lengths after a Ballerina victory. And like I said, quite a few repeats in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint over the years. Wouldn't surprise me. She wins. She's training well. I'll give her a shot here on the ticket. Even the 4 horse Matre. If this horse going to come from mid-pack, I think it could be her. She hasn't been seen since the Ballerina, where she just ran a flat 3rd that day. Again, ran a flat 3rd in the Chicago, but won that Derby Distaff, Humana Distaff, whatever they call that race at Churchill. I can't even remember now. Derby City Distaff, Derby weekend at Churchill, where she won by length that day and really took off clear, and then had a decent place in the matron at Oaklawn in early March. Coming here today, finally making the Breeders' Cup after some absences in the last 2 years. I'll give her a shot, but something with her, she hasn't hit that triple-digit buyer yet. A lot of these other horses have. She hasn't. That scared me a little bit, but she's improving. Watch out for her on the ticket. But to recount my selection for the 5th from Santa Anita, it is the Filly Mare Sprint. Gonna take the 7 horse Society. Give kudos to the 1 horse Goodnight Olive and the 4 horse Maitreya. 7149 Super, 714 in our multi race. Let's head over to race number 6, an exciting one. The 6th race from Santa Anita, it is the Breeders' Cup Mile. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $2 million purse race for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 14 horses entered. We do have some defections here. We have to take out, let's see, or no, we don't. We do. We have to take out the 12 horse Exalted. So we'll be down to a baker's dozen, 13 horses going 1,600 meters or a mile on the turf course here, and the Breeders' Cup Mile, one of the OG Breeders' Cup races. My top selection, I'm gonna go with the number 11 horse here, Kalina. I'm gonna go 11, 3, 10, 14 in this superfecta. 11, 3, 10, 14 super. Top selection, 11 horse Kalina. 3-year-old filly by Frankel here. Carlos Piaz, Lefant trains. Maxime Guillaume gets the mount. Pardon me, my French is horrible. The horse's most recent outing came in the Prix de la Forêt at Longchamp. 7 furlongs on the 1st of October on pretty fast ground for Longchamp. The horse won by a half a length that day, and she took off clear facing the boys. She settled well nicely. When she got to the front end, she had a little bit of a trouble getting to the front end, but she found room. She quickened up nicely off of that, and then she took off clear. That was a very good run. Gonna get a wide trip here today again, but off of a decent run last time out, I expect her to really improve and get a good trip to win. She didn't run terrifically in the race before, was in the Group 1 Prix de Moline de Longchamp, 1 mile on the 3rd of September. She finished 7 by 7 3/4 lengths that day. She sat back early, and she just never had the turn of foot. That was a very flat race for her. And then at Deauville in the Group 1 Prix Rothschild on soft ground, she wasn't handling it that day. I don't think she liked it. She finished 8th by 14.5 lengths that day. She was on the front end, which I don't think she liked either, and she completely crumbled that day. Not her day. And then the Prix de Sangraham at Chantilly on fast ground, 1 mile in early June, winning by 2 lengths that day. She was a little bit wide, but she really took off clear. A very easy run. She is coming to a two-bend kind of a 1 mile trip, which I don't think should be bad for her, and I think she could really do wonders. I think the key with her today will be the fast ground. And I also don't, the wide poster scares me a little bit, but within a mile, you need to have a good trip. If she's stuck on the inside, I think she could get caught in traffic. On the outside, I think it could be clear sailing for her. At 5-1 coming from mid-pack, I expect her to really run decently. I think the 3-horse Consecrate, the old man for Belmont and Luis Saez, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mike Francesa might even own this horse. It's a 7-year-old horse by Jimmy Creed. I think he has a strong chance of winning here. They've taken this time with this horse, and he's like wine. He gets better with age. Most recently, the 4-star Dave at Saratoga over the mile, he won by 3/4 length. And for this old man to get the job done, I thought it was very good. Wasn't the world's toughest 4-star Dave, but he was a little bit wide. But when he got the turn of foot, he really took off clear. A 102 buyer, nothing bad about that race coming back to a routing trip. Early Saratoga meeting in the Kelso, the horse won by a length again. A little bit time to get going, a little bit wide, but he saw the pace to close up into. And then they tried the horse off the bench in the Belmont Jaipur, where he finished 3rd by length. He was gaining that day. He was a little bit wide, but nobody was catching Caravel, who was freaking that day. And then nearly won the Middle East in the 1351 turf sprint at in Saudi Arabia, where the horse finished 2nd by a head. Had a bit of a troubled trip that day, but he ran his heart out gaining that day. They ran him last year's turf sprint, where he never really got going. He ran in the mile 2 seasons ago, where he just, his form wasn't that good yet. And like I said, he's really improved with age. Came back to show some potential at the end of last year in the mile division, and then this year he's just become better and better. Really been improving. Watch out for him at 8-1. He's also training well, very, very nicely since the 4-star Dave. I'll use him on the ticket, and watch out for the 10-horse song line from Japan here for Tasaki. Most recently in the Manichi Akon at Tokyo in early October, the horse finished 2nd by a nose that day, and he really had the turn of foot on the very fast ground. He just missed, but he ran his heart out. Prior to them, the Yusina Kinen at Tokyo over the mile, he won by 1/4 lengths that day, and again, he stalked easy to win that day. And then the Victoria Mile, he won quite nicely. The turf courses in Japan are quite fast, similar to the courses here stateside, and they're all 1-turn miles basically. Coming around 2 turns for the first time shouldn't be a problem. I'll give this horse a massive shot on the ticket here from a wide poster. And also the 14 horse you have to give a shot to, Master of the Seas. His Victor 2-back at Woodbine in the Woodbine Mile wasn't bad at all. Again, wasn't the world's toughest Woodbine Mile, but he really took off clear that day and came back to run a decent race in the Coolmore Turf Mile after that. In this race in the UK, day. He only ran once in the summer mile, where he won quite easily that day. He is stepping up in some class you consider his UK form, but in the UK he was just, he just didn't like the soft ground. He likes the fast ground. At 7-2, I'll use him, but I do prefer the other three before him, and I do think he'll get bet into the ground. I don't think these other three I have first on the ticket will get bet in the ground in this very wide open mile. But to recount my selections now for the sixth race from Santa Anita, it is the Breeders' Cup Mile. I'm going to take the number 11 horse here, Kalina, as a top selection. We'll give kudos to the 3 horse Consecrate, the 10 horse Songline, and the 14 horse Master of the Seas. 11, 3, 10, 14 Super. Use them all 4 in the multi-race. There's a pick 4 that begins with this race, so let's play it. Let's get to another OG turf, Breeders' Cup race, the 7th race from Santa Anita. It's the Breeders' Cup Distaff. It's a grade 1 event going for $2 million purse race for fillies, mares, 3-year-olds, and upwards. We have a field of 11 horses entered. Pretty Mischievous was actually a scratch on Friday morning. So we'll be down to a field of 10 horses going 1,800 meters or a mile and 1/8 here in this year's Distaff. Something a lot of people don't know, the first few Breeders' Cup Distaffs were running up actually a mile and a quarter, and then they decreased the distance. I want to say it was either 1986 or 1987, but I wish they would actually increase the trip again to a mile and a quarter. Basically, the only mile and a quarter race now for this division, and it's not even for the division, for the 3-year-olds, you have the Alabama. For all the horses in the Distaff division, what's the mile and a quarter race? Or the longest race, I think you have the Delaware Handicap, which is a mile 3/16. But, it's a shame that you don't have enough longer distance races for these for this division. But my top selection here in the Distaff, I'm going to go take the 6 horse search results. I'll go 6, 4, 7, 8 in the superfecta. 6, 4, 7, 8 super. Top selection 6 horse search results. 5-year-old mare by Flatter. Chad Brown trains. Tease Jr. gets the mount. The horse's most recent outing came the Lotus Grove at Churchill, mile 16th of September, and the horse won by 3.5 lengths that day. She basically walked on the front end, and she really took off clear. It was a 98 buyer, wasn't the fastest race of her time, but she really took off clear that day. It was a good confidence builder. Coming into the Distaff, she is stepping up in class here today, but I think she'll see a strong pace to close up into, and I think she could find the winner's circle here today. 2 back in the Molly Pitcher at Monmouth, mile 16th of mid-July. She finished 3rd by 1/4 lengths that day, and she was off and on the lead throughout. The winner had the job done easily, but this horse, she just was flat that day. Very warm day. Maybe she didn't handle a Monmouth that day. And then prior to then, the Ogden Phillips at Belmont over the mile in the 16th. She finished 2nd by half a length. Clariere finally came back to her old ways to win that day. This horse stalked. She had the lead. Clariere caught her in the lane. What can she do? She ran her heart out that day. And then the La Trione, she finished 3rd by 3/4 length that day. And again, she just couldn't get the good turn of foot from mid-pack. She was kind of flat that day. Like I said, I thought the last race was a good confidence builder. She's proven she could win off of the stalking trip. Coming here today, I'm going to use her. Idiomatic might win this race on the front end walking like she's won her last 2 races. I can't believe they let her walk in the Spinster. Shame on them that day, the other jockeys. But going a mile and 1/8 at Keeneland earlier in October, she won by 4 1/4 lengths with 100 buyer. They walked her on the front end. That was a very good race. Problem is, they let her walk on the front end in the personal ensign at Saratoga on the slop over the mile and 1/8. Winning by 4 lengths that day. What can you do? They should have went with her that day, and or at least last time out in the Spinster. Will they do it in the 3rd race? I don't think so. I think somebody's going to go with her. But I do think her best race lifetime was in that Delaware Handicap, where she broke horribly that day. She had to gain a little bit ground. She had to be used a lot that day, but she showed potential with a 100 buyer that day. And then the Shawnee at Churchill of the mile 16th, she won by 3.5 lengths that day. A very, very good race. She's been on this improve all throughout. She had a great winter turf way. Watch out for freaking here 5-2. But like I said, shame on them in the Keeneland letting her walk. I don't think they're going to do it on her today. I don't think they're going to let her do it today. But watch out for her here, and watch out for Wet Paint. She seemed like the horse everybody was betting into the Oaks earlier this season. But then and then she just came up flat. She came up flat in the Monomoy Girl at Ellis, and came back to win the coaching club quite nicely. But she hasn't really gotten to the next level with the buyers yet. But she has ability at 10-1. I'll give her a shot to possibly upset, but she's the kind of horse. Watch out for her going into her next year's campaign. I think she could be a horse that could really improve with a 4-year-old campaign. She can win here on paper, but I do think the other two are more likelier winners, and they've proven they can run fast races. She hasn't gotten that fast race yet. But to recap my selection for the 7 from Santa Anita, it's the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Gonna take the 6-horse search results. Give kudos to the 4-horse Idiomatic and the 7-horse Wet Paint. 6-4-7-8 Super. 6-4-7 in our multi-race. Let's get to race number 8. The 8th race from Santa Anita, it is the Breeders' Cup Turf. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $4 million purse race for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 13 horses entered. We have to take out a few horses here. We're going to have to scratch the 4-horse Belchois Ballet, which is a scratch. It's a shame his form was really getting great as a racing. The 6-horse Get Smokin' is going to be a scratch also. So we'll be down to a field of 11 horses in this year's turf going the 2,400-meter journey or a mile and a half on the Santa Anita turf course. My top selection, I love the 13-horse Warlike Goddess. I'm going to go 13-5-11-1 in the superfecta. 13-5-11-1 super. Top selection, 13-horse Warlike Goddess. 6-year-old mare by English Channel. Belmont Range. Junior Alvarado gets the mount. English Channel, best to be remembered by winning this race in 2007 at Monmouth Park in the absolutely sloppy conditions they had that day on very heavy turf. If I'm not mistaken, I think the only time the sun came out was in that Breeders' Cup turf that weekend at Monmouth. Other than that, it was just horrible. But Warlike Goddess ran on very heavy, sloppy going at Aqueduct 3-4 weeks ago, a mile and a half on the outer turf course in the Joe Hurst Turf Classic, winning by 4.5 lengths. The pace setter so high went in front by a bunch that day, so they had a strong, slow pace to close up into, and she was way out of it early. She was stupidly wide, but on the demanding ground, for her to make up ground like that, she really took off clear with a 105 buyer. That was impressive. It was probably a good, stamina builder also, getting a good handle of the ground to go away with that like that, being the boys' home. Coming here today off of a good stamina builder, back to a mile and a half, training incredibly well. I expect her to go up a lot with the fast ground. Gonna have to overcome wide posture, but I think she's sitting up there with the Europeans. A lot of people keep talking the Europeans have the strong edge. They do, but I think the Europeans' biggest challenge would be this horse from the state, Warlike Goddess, and I think a 12-1 today, which I don't think you'll see at pose, but in theory, 12-1 should really suit this horse well, and I think she could get the trip to win. I don't think Joelle gave the horse a great ride too back in the Glens Falls over the mile and a half at Saratoga. She finished second by a neck that day. She stalked. She wanted to go. Joelle had a tight hold on her most of the race up until the backstretch. 5 furlongs from home, they started letting her go. But McCulloch just timed the race perfectly, took off clear. This one, I just think it was jockey error. And then prior to that, they ran over the mile and a quarter in the New York. That was the first weekend the portable rails were down at Belmont all year. So the inside horses, the inside lanes, front end horses were winning easily. This horse was wide throughout. She moved a little bit late over a trip that's not to her liking, over a turf course that could play quirky at times. It wasn't a recipe for success. Put an X to that race. And then her seasonal reappearance in the Bewitch at Keeneland over the mile and a half, winning by 1/4 lengths that day. She only had 4 of the rivals. She was a little bit wide, but she really took off clear. Even her Breeders' Cup Turf last year wasn't bad at all in defeat. She finished third by 3 lengths. Rebels Romance took off clear. This horse was really gaining that day, a little bit too late, but with a 101 buyer, she really did decently there. And then last year's Turf Classic at Aqueduct over the mile and a half on the inner turf course that time. She was a little bit wide, but again, she really took off clear. Getting Junior up today, and Junior and Belmont seem like they've been winning everything as of recently. Watch out for this horse. Like I said, I think she beat easily home last time out. Last year's Breeders' Cup Turf winner, Rebels Romance. So watch out for this one here today. I think she might be freaking at the right time. I think the your second likeliest winner is 5-horse Augustine rode in for Ian O'Brien and Ryan Moore. Most recently in the Irish Champions over the mile and a quarter at Leopardstown. He won by 1/2 length that day, and he stalked that day, and he got to the front end easily. That was a good going away victory. He likes fast ground. He'll absolutely like this going today. He absolutely hated the soft going he saw 2 back at Ascot, a mile and a half in the King George, where he finished 10th by 33 lengths that day, and he walked on the line. He just he hated the going that day. Prior to the Derby at Dakura, he won by 1.5 lengths that day. And again, on the front end, it might have been a little bit of a tired horse that day. A quick turnaround from the Derby the month prior, but he really took off clear that day. And then the Epsom Derby over the mile and a half, winning by a half a length that day, slowly moving his way into the race. That was a strong run. They ran him in the Guineas before that. On soft ground, he never got going that day. I also think he needed the run. He won last year's Futurity Trophy on heavy ground at Doncaster, but he was much the best on paper against some not so tough horses. But he's definitely been on the improve. Should definitely get the mile and a half. Watch out for him here at 3-1, and also watch out for the 11 horse here, King of Steel for Roger Varian and Frankie Dettori. We won the soft ground in the Champion Stakes at Royal Ascot last 3 weeks ago, winning by 3/4 in length that day. He really won quite nicely. Ran the Irish Champions a month prior, where he just never really got going that day, and then the King George finished third. I do think the ground got to him. He's come back to the mile and a quarter. Coming back to a mile and a half. He won the King Edward over the mile and a half at Ascot earlier this season, and had a massive place at 66 to 1 in the Derby earlier this year at Epsom. Coming here today, he's really peaking at the right time, getting Frankie up at 4-1. Watch out for this horse. She could definitely win here on the ticket. But to recount my selection for the 8th from Santanita, it is the Breeders' Cup Turf. I'm going to take 13 horse Warlike Goddess. We'll give kudos to the 5 horse August Radin and the 11 horse King of Steel. 13, 5, 11. 13, 5, 11, 1 super, 13, 5, 11 in our multi-race. Let's get now to the featured 9th race from Santanita. A shame it's not the closing race of the meeting, but it's the third last race of the meeting. The 9th race from Santanita, it's a big one. It's the Breeders' Cup Classic. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $6 million purse race for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 13 horses entered, but we'll be down to a field of 12 horses because Arcangelo is withdrawn. So 12 horses will go 2,000 meters or a mile and a quarter on the Santanita main track. My top selection, I'm going to take the 2 horse Zandon. I'm going to go 2, 8, 11, 6 in the superfecta. 2, 8, 11, 6 super. Top selection 2 horse Zandon. For a colt by Upstart. Chad Brown trains. Frankie Dettori gets the mounts. The horse's most recent outing came the Grade 2 Woodward and Aqueduct, mile and 8th on the 1st of October, and the horse won by 4.5 lengths that day, and he snapped back early into a good pace in front of it. He was a little bit wide, but he really grinded it out to the wire. Got the job done. A very good run with a 104 buyer. Refreshing back to a mile and a quarter today for the second time. For the third time, first time in a little bit, off of some decent buyers that he's been running in defeat. I think he could get a good race, and I think he could win here today. I think he'll see a strong pace to close up with. 2 back in the Whitney at Saratoga, mile and 8th on the 5th of August. Nobody was catching Guadabario that day. He really took off clear from a tracking trip. He finished second by 6 1/4 lengths. He was a little bit wide. He was a little bit out of it early on, but he was gaining that day. And then the Met Mile at Belmont over the mile, he finished second by 3.5 lengths. Again, Cody's Wish over the 1-turn mile. Nobody was catching him. This horse just couldn't catch him, but he ran a very good place that day. And then the Westchester Belmont off the bench. He finished second by 5 1/4 lengths. Repo Rocks is a decent horse over the winter at Aqueduct and going into the early spring at Belmont. That was his last hurrah. This horse is just wide and couldn't catch the freak of a horse that day. But he's run very many triple-digit buyers. His last 4 are triple digits. He ran a triple-digit 3 times last year in the Jim Dandy, Travers, and Pennsylvania Derby. All races in defeat. So, and if you look at some of the horses he's been facing, just a couple lengths behind, Tabium, Epicenter, go back to earlier this year, Cody's Wish, Guadabario, who, I think might be better at a mile and 8th than a mile and a quarter. I think this horse I think Zandon gets better with a mile and a quarter. He's training well at Belmont, getting Frankie up. Watch out for this horse late here today. I do think the 8 horse here is your second likeliest winner. If I could get to the page, the number 8 horse here, Yusaba Tesori for Yuka Kawadi and the 6-year-old horse here by Offrey. Most recently at Funabashi over the mile and 8th in a local stakes race, he won by 2.5 lengths that day. They need a race under his belt, so they took him to the smaller track, and he basically won in a waltz. That was a very good run. Prior to that, the big one, the Dubai World Cup at Maidan over the mile and a quarter, he won by 2 1/4 lengths that day, and he didn't break so well, but he sat back early, and he saw a good good pace to close up to. He took off clear. That was a very good strong run. And at Kowalski in a local stakes race, he won by a half a length that day. And again, they needed a race to get him to, and he took off clear. And then the dirt at Ohio over the mile quarter in the Group 1 Tokyo de Shenzhen, winning by 1 1/4 lengths that day. Again, he won quite nicely. He likes the dirt. He has some forwardly pace. He won the World Cup. Coming here second off the bench, he should be freaking at the right time at 4-1. Watch out for him. And I also think the 11 horse here, Bright Future. I do think he has a bright future. He might have to jump up a lot of buyers to win, but I think he goes up a lot with him on the quarter. Top Pletcher trains. Johnny V gets on this one, so the OG crew here and the in one of the OG Breeders Cup races. Most recently ran the horse in the Jockey Club at which track are we at? At the Jockey Club at Saratoga back on Labor Day weekend, where he won by a nose that day. He stalked all the way around the race course, a little bit wide, but he held on to the race. That was a very good run. Prior to that, they took him to an allowance race at Saratoga over the mile and eighth. They tried him to, in the race prior, they tried him too quickly in the Brooklyn, which I thought was just not the right idea in hindsight. But they took him to allowance race to get him victor, and he did. He won by 4 3/4 lengths, a little bit wide, but he took off clear at the top of the lane. And then in early June at Belmont over the mile and a half in the Brooklyn, he finished 8th by 14 3/4 lengths. 43 1/4 lengths. First time 2 turns at a mile and a half, very tough. 2 turns first time is tough in general, but 2 turns a mile and a half, very, very tough. He was just wide and he walked in the line. He wasn't fit that day, but he had a decent third at Churchill over the mile in a allowance race back in May Derby weekend, and then he won a very nice allowance race at Gulfstream earlier on Florida Derby Day. But he's a horse definitely been improving with every single race. He's bred for the mile and a quarter. He's training well Keeneland. Watch out for this horse late, or watch out for this horse on the front end to possibly upset here, and even watch out for the 6 horse Saudi Crown. I think he's going to set the pace. Biggest question with him is, can he get the mile and a quarter? He is by and always he is by Always Dreaming, who did get the mile and a quarter quite a few seasons ago in the Derby, and the Taffet horses on the dam side definitely get the mile and a quarter, but he has some very nice cruise control. I thought his race in the Dwyer in defeat behind Fort Bragg wasn't bad at all with the 106 Spire. Came back to run a massive place behind Forte in the Jim Dandy, and then won the Pennsylvania Derby on the absolutely sludgy going at Parks quite nicely a few weeks ago. He's run some decent numbers as of recently. Can he get the mile and a quarter? That will be the biggest question, but at 12-1, I think he's a very nice horse, and I look forward to hopefully them running this horse again next year, because he could do a lot, I think. But to recap my selection for the ninth now from Santa Anita, it's the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic. We're going to take the number 2 horse Zandon as a top selection. We'll give kudos to the 8 horse Usaba Tassori and the 11 horse Bright Future and the 6 horse Saudi Crown. 2, 8, 11, 6 super. We'll use the 2, 8, 11, and 6 all in our multi-race. Let's get to now race number 10 from Santa Anita. The 10th race from Santa Anita, it is the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. It's a Grade 1 event going for a purse of $1 million. Race for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field of 16 horses originally entered. We have quite a few withdrawals in this one. The 2 horses scratched, the number 13 horses scratched, and the 16 horses scratched. So we'll have a field of 12 horses entered. To go 1,000 meters or 5 furlongs on the Santa Anita turf course. Out of all the races on today's program that caused me trouble, I think this is one of the biggest ones that is just a head scratcher, and I can see a lot of these horses winning. But my top selection here, I'm going to go with the 10 horse Motorist as top selection. I'm going to go 10, 7, 8, 3 in the superfecta. And tell you the truth, any of these 4 can win, and you could probably add 3 more to the list, I think. But the 10 horse Motorist is 5-year-old gelding by Mare here. Phil D'Amato trains. Flavia and Pratt gets to mount. Horse's most recent outing came the Green Flash handicap at Del Mar over the 5 in early September. Winning by 1 1/4 lengths that day. He sat back early, a little bit wide late, but he really took off clear. I thought that was a very strong run from a wide trip on a very narrow turf course. Back to Santa Anita, where this horse likes running. Off some decent buyers as of recently. I think he has enough speed and enough agility to win here today. These 5 furlong turf sprints at Santa Anita tend to be more towards front running horses. He can run towards the front end. He did that 3-back actually in the San Simeon down the hillside turf course at 6.5. He won by 2 1/4 lengths that day, and he was a little bit wide, but he took off clear. After that, they ran in the Churchill Downs turf sprint, where he finished 2nd by 3/4 length that day, and he never really got going until very late in the run. He ran his heart out that day, but he still needed something. And then I want to go back to the Clocker's Corner at Santino, going 6.5 in late June and late January, where he finished second by 2.25 lengths that day, and he had a bad trip that day, which cost him early on. Not getting a clear sailing room really, just cost him the victor. And then early January at 6.5 down the hill at Santino, winning by 3.25 lengths that day. Not the best beginnings, but after that he really flew home easy. Coming here today off some decent runs as of recently with some nice triple-digit buyers. I'm going to use him on the ticket. I think the 7 horse here you have to use no balls for Gerardo Corrales and Larry Ravelli. Most recently in the DeHaas at 5.5 at Colonial, he won by a head that day, and he really took off clear on the front end. I thought he showed potential that day. Prior to then, the Troy at Saratoga on soft ground, he finished second by 3/4 length. Cogburn caught him that day. On the soft ground, he just couldn't keep up. And then he won a very nice black type at Indiana on the front end, going the 5 furlong trip. And then he won the Twin Spires Turf Sprint at Churchill quite nicely, making his Breeders' Cup debut here today off some decent runs. Was only hit the triple-digit buyer once, but I think he's leaving, and it wouldn't surprise me if he steals on the front end at 6-1. Let's use him. Even the 8 horse here, Asepo's Fables for Aiden O'Brien and Ryan Moore. He hasn't won in a little bit here since the futurity at Dakar last summer, but if you look at some of the horses he's been facing in the sprints in Ireland and in France, those are some decent horses he's been finishing behind. Coming here today, it wouldn't surprise me if he finds a clear trip to win. I'll use him. And even the 3 horse Caravel, who won this race last year, her form, she had a great form at the beginning of the season, but it's slowly gotten backwards here as the season's gone on. But she's the kind of horse that will run these head scratchers, and then she'll run a great race that comes out of nowhere. At 5-1, I'll use her. And like I said, you could go a few more ways. I think Big Invasion has a strong chance from the inside. I like his victory at Woodbine last time out, and even the place in the Harvey Pack wasn't bad at all. He could definitely win. Gear Jockey at 12-1. It wouldn't surprise me if he finds the winner's circle, and even the if he runs the 14 horse Beer Can man, he's coming here off the bench, and he's gonna have to overcome wide poster, but he has some decent races, watch out. Like I said, this is just a head scratcher of a turf sprint this year. You go many ways, but to recap my selections for this head scratcher, the 10th race from Santa Anita, it's the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Gonna take the number 10 horse Motorist as a top selection. Give kudos to the 7 horse No Balls, the 8 horse Asepo's Fables, and the 3 horse Caravel. 10, 7, 8, 3 Super. Use all 4 of them in the multis and more, I think. Like I said, it's just a very wide open one. But let's get to the Breeders' Cup Nightcap, the 11th race from Santa Anita. Remember, on the regular Santa Anita program, there's one more after this down the Hillside Turf course, so it's going to be an exciting one to run. But we won't look at that for YouTube, but we'll watch it as a fan because it's very aesthetically pleasing, that Hillside Turf course race. But let's look at the 11th race, final Breeders' Cup race of the weekend. It's the Breeders' Cup Sprint. It's going for a purse of Grade 1 event, going for a purse $2 million, race for 3-year-olds and upwards. Field of 9 horses enter, go 1,200 meters or 6 furlongs on the turf course. Actually, 9 horses enter. The 3 horse American Theorem is a scratch, so 8 horses are going the 6 furlongs. And this is a Breeders' Cup Sprint without some speed. Seems like this race is lacking speed as seasons go on, and you just have a lot of closers, not a lot of front end horses. I could see a 25-second first quarter here, but I think a horse that could steal it on the front is the 4 horse Hoist the Gold. I'm gonna go 4-8-2-9 in the superfecta. 4-8-2-9 Super. Top selection of 4 horse Hoist the Gold. 4 colt by Mineshaft. Dallas Stewart trains. John Velasquez gets the mount. Horse's most recent outing came the Phoenix at Keeneland, 6 furlongs in early October, and the horse won by 3/4 length that day. He didn't break on top that day, but he got to the front end that day, seeing some good fractions. He quickened up nicely, and he got the job done. First time coming back with a 1-on-1 buyer. I thought that was a very good effort coming into the Breeders' Cup. Coming here again, off of a decent run, could set the pace. I think he could really run a good race and win here today. He does his better running style, I've noticed, on the front end, so hopefully Johnny just sends him again. He came off the pace in the Pat O'Brien at Del Mar, 7 furlongs in late August, where he finished 6 by 6 and 3/4 lengths that day. He didn't get out of the gate so clearly. He was wide, and I just don't think he was comfortable that day in the back. And then the Bing Crosby over the 6, he finished 8 by 4 1/4 lengths that day, and he just didn't show up that day. But a race he was on the front end at Ellis
Ellis going 7 in optional 80. He won by 1 3/4 lengths that day, and he took off clear with a 95 Beyer. That was a fast race that he did wonders in. Again, he didn't do wonders in the Met Mile where he just couldn't keep up there. But he had a decent place in the Churchill Downs Stakes Derby weekend behind Cody's Wish. Like I said, if they send this horse to the front end, that's where he likes running, and that's where he's run his higher Beyers. At 12-1, I think he's loaded a lot to steal this race. I think you can't throw out the 8-horse Elite Power, who won this race quite nicely, closing up from nowhere last year. Came back to run, I thought, the race of his life in the Riyadh Dirt Sprint at in Saudi Arabia, where he really circled the field quite nicely, and then came back to win the True North and won the Vanderbilt quite nicely in impressive fashion with a 108 Beyer. Last time out, Gunnett just had the jump on him in the forego on the front end, but this horse, he ran his heart out, cutting back to 6, off the bench, training well. If there's going to be a horse that could catch Hoist to Gold, it could be him. At 9-5, I'll use him, but I really like Hoist to Gold in the spot. He's going to get a very nice wager from me here across the board. But to recap my selection for the Breeders' Cup Nightcap, the 11th race from Santonia now, it's the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Going to take the 4-horse Hoist to Gold, give kudos to the 8-horse Elite Power, 4-8-2-9 Super. Let's go 4-8 to end off the Breeders' Cup races. So with that being said, good luck to all. Please follow me on Twitter or X at HorseRacingKid5 for more selections for race courses around the world. And remember to subscribe to me here on YouTube for some more handicapping action from all the race courses around planet Earth. And I mean it. I look at races everywhere. If there's 2 ants running on Mars tomorrow, I'll probably handicap it. So good luck, and hopefully we have some winners here at Santonia.